And so,
One of the.
I know when did you get any information from heirs
And
on the building? Some of the questions we had.
yeah, yep. On the like the square footage of the evidence room and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but. I did.
I could have just worked tonight.
Yes. Well, the question is, and I don't, this microphone, is the microphone on?
Can anybody hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Craig.
Okay, thank you.
No, I think to answer those questions. So I think that that's really the, I hope it's still we can improve, but let's see. I mean, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Can't see anything else. If the question comes up.
Because I like. Anybody in the room happy that Tom Brady won his 7th Super Bowl, is still married to a supermodel? Anybody?
Didn't even watch the game.
I hardly did. I wasn't. Are you happy?
Yeah, I just wish I would have bet on him.
Wait a minute, we're live, Tom.
Yep. I am.
Should I call you? Because you're probably still awake.
Okay.
4:30 in the morning?
What are you gonna do?
There's a chance you're still awake?
Yeah, it probably is.
Is that when you get up?
without an alarm clock,
Hey,
actually. This is COVID. I think. 3 t-shirt nights. This one, next one's really bad.
wow.
Last night was a 2-year. And then I wake up at 4:30 in the morning. It's like, the sheets, I had it on our web, this thing is bad. Because you have to change the shirt. It's like, well, I can't do that.
Yeah, I got my second vaccine. I took it Wednesday night.
You did get it.
I did. I took a 3-hour nap on Thursday. I took a 3-hour nap on Friday. I took a nap on Saturday. Yesterday.
Vaccine related. That,
Oh, clearly, yeah. I didn't feel bad. I was just
you're tired.
dog tired and I laid down and I figured it'd be a 15-20 minute nap. 3 hours later, I woke up.
Yeah, I'll tell you. Whole business is gonna be, because it really does. Really stop and think about change. Physical behavior.
Mhm.
What it was 30 years ago.
Well,
You just did it. I understand. This is. I don't know what I'm feeling inside.
all right, it is 7:01. You bet. Just close the door. I think we need to have the door open. Okay. All right.
I know the door's supposed to be open, but for sound quality, I close it, but there's signs on that say, please come in. This is an open meeting.
Perfect.
Otherwise, you guys will have crazy echo on go-to.
We're doing this so people can hear.
There's a note on the door to come on in if they want to come into the meeting.
But why did they close it?
Or the
Sound.
sound quality, they're testing tonight.
If that helps.
So we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. And Michelle, can you take roll call?
You bet. Mayor Horn,
Here.
Alderman Kittle,
This conference will now be recorded.
Alderman Lindell, Alderman Weinmeier,
Here.
Alderman Montello,
Here.
Alderman Volkert,
Here.
Alderman Kraft.
So we do have a quorum, so we can continue. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Here.
We have
It's Craig.
Alderman Kittle is present.
He's in the house. Well, he's not in the house.
Thank you, Craig. So, good evening. City staff are requesting that anyone watching on cable, so if you're watching cable, whether it's live or it's delayed, if you're watching cable, please call the office for important feedback on the quality of our broadcast. We want to hear from you how well you're hearing us and how well you're seeing us. It is important to hear from you as we look at new ways to share meetings. So if you are watching on cable, please call Marie at 715-246-4268. Again, 715-246-4268 and ask for Marie.
Mr. Mayor, so I'm assuming that's not tonight. Is she on duty right now?
Not tonight.
No, so I'm just saying, just to point out that it's during business hours.
Sure.
That's correct.
Yeah, I
Great,
think
great.
that's awesome for us to get that feedback. I was afraid somebody's watching now and they'll pick up their phone and call and
Good. Well, point taken. Adoption of the agenda.
I make a motion, we approve the agenda,
The motion
adopt it, sorry.
to adopt the agenda, is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Public comments. Does anybody wish to make a public comment at this time? Not hearing or seeing any. Consent agenda.
Make a motion, we approve the consent agenda.
There's a motion to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. And under old business, purchasing policy and procedure.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. In front of you tonight is the final draft of the purchasing policy and procedure. We have developed this to provide a consistent, uniform, and transparent process to our procurement, providing necessary controls to assure the lowest cost, highest quality of goods and services are obtained. The policy incorporates the feedback of staff as well as council over the last few readings that we have had in January. Some notable items that were included into that as part of that feedback does address the surplus equipment, so that has been included as an appendix. We clarified some additional language, content, things of that nature. There was a correction in the policy to indicate 2 to 3 quotes. It was misprinted to say 3 quotes, so we did clarify that at each level of purchase and procurement there. So at this point, all the feedback that we have received has been incorporated again. So we are recommending approval of that policy tonight. In addition, we would also recommend to amend ordinance 2-187 to read as outlined in the memo, which would allow us to amend the policy as needed with our organization and process changes in the future, if necessary, but provides that reference back in the ordinance to the policy that's in front of you tonight. So the recommendation would be 2 recommendations. The first being approval to adopt the City of New Richmond purchasing policy, and then the second to amend ordinance 2-187.
Brand, I just want to extend some thanks for the work that you and other staff have done in this. I think this is terrific to have these things in writing and really outline it. It's good. And Mr. Mayor, I'm going to offer a motion that we approve the purchasing policy and amend ordinance 2-187. Read and suspend the rules.
All right, there's a motion to approve and amend the ordinance. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Call the roll.
Alderman Kittle,
Is he there?
Alderman Kittle.
I see a yes. Alderman Lindell,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft.
Right, and that motion passes. On to new business, resolution 022101. Resolution approving an investment policy update on city investment portfolio and economic update.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. On the call with us tonight is Matt Slawinski and Dave Meza. They are our investment advisors with Dana. They have served as the city's and the utilities investment advisor since 2019. On a regular basis, staff, we meet with them, go over the portfolio, economic conditions, and establish kind of the priorities and develop those opportunities that we explore into the future. So in January, we held one of those meetings. Obviously, the market environment is different today. And so some of our strategies and how we're talking about, preserving liquidity, preserving our principal, ensuring liquidity, and then also getting a reasonable rate of return. That is changing a little bit in an aspect of our investment policy. We would like to alter that investment policy slightly. Matt will go over that a little bit tonight. That would allow us to also invest in SPA securities, which are fully backed by the U.S. government, but he'll go over that in a little bit. And also just go over some various market conditions that they're seeing and then address any questions. So they have about a short 5-8 minute presentation to go over the city's portfolio, holdings, and recommendations. So I'll turn it over to Matt. He has a couple of slides that I will.
I'm
help
here. I said yes.
transition through.
Yes.
So Matt, if you are ready, I'll turn it over to you.
Absolutely, and thank you for having us. As Rayanne said, obviously, over the last couple of years since we've been the investment advisor for the portfolio, the market's changed pretty significantly. And so we wanted to bring up kind of an adjustment that we're looking at making for the portfolio, and it would obviously need to be addressed in the investment policy statement. So what you see on this slide here is just a minor change to the policy. What we're looking at doing is increasing the level of SBA holdings in the portfolio, bringing them from currently we're at 0 to somewhere between 0 and 25% of the portfolio. These are full faith and credit securities of the U.S. government, so they're no difference in credit quality versus what you already own, but they do have longer final maturities than we typically have in the portfolio. So, where we typically might have a 0 to 5 year maturity in the portfolio, these go out from 10 to 30 years. And so we wanted to bring up that the language change that we're looking at including in the portfolio investment policy statement. These are adjustable rate securities. And so typically most of our clients that would use them would write something similar to the language that we have in the middle of the screen there that says for securities with adjustable or floating rate coupons, the time to reset will be used in place of final maturity. And basically that says, you may have a 5-year final maturity on a normal security. This has a 10-year maturity, but it might reset on a quarterly basis or a monthly basis. And so you're looking to the reset date as opposed to the final maturity date for any restrictions in the policy. That allows you to continue to have, final maturities of 5 years restricted in the portfolio if they're fixed rate coupons. So, any questions on that? If you don't have any questions, I can certainly go through some of the economic and market slides we brought with us just to talk about kind of why we're making that change, and maybe that will help kind of clarify where we're looking at differences in the portfolio.
Matt, I want to ask you, this is Alderman Montello, what is the current SBA security paying right now?
So it's a great question. It depends on the coupon structure in terms of the interest level you get. But from a yield perspective, which is kind of the equalizing mechanism within the market, you're getting roughly between 1 and 125. So 1 to 1.25%. Currently, the portfolio yield is at about 50 basis points, about 0.5%. So it would be a significant increase in yield into the portfolio by allowing those to be a part of the portfolio allocation.
And this particular investment, and I just want to understand it. I understand what you're doing. I just want to understand it. If you take something that's got a 5-year maturity, so it's obviously not very liquid. The rate, we understand that you've got some flexibility there, but it's not liquid. It's an investment that you're not doing anything with for 5 years, just based on using that as an example. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we do have liquidity with a 5-year final simply if we went to the market to sell it. But from a risk standpoint, you have more interest rate risk with a 5-year final maturity security that has a fixed rate coupon. So if we weren't to sell it, for example, and you didn't need the money from the portfolio and we bought a 5-year security, it would have a duration around 5, which would mean that you have essentially 5 times, if not more, the risk in that security than you have in an SBA that adjusts on a quarterly basis. Simply because as market levels move around, the SBA is going to adjust with whatever the current level of market yields is. The 5-year final you're locked into for 5 years.
Right, but I guess the part I didn't know, that's a security that you can sell in the open market. So it could be very liquid. I mean, if you choose to make it so.
Correct. Yes, we can, anything in the portfolio we can turn around and sell and have the cash the following day.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep. So I'll spend just a couple minutes going through some of the market slides here, and if you have questions, certainly feel free to stop me. The slide that we're looking at on slide 4 gets into a little bit of what's going on in the market. Obviously, with the Fed, it is brought in low interest rates down to zero. They brought in QE programs more so than they've ever done prior to this year, simply because they had to address the coronavirus situation in March of last year, and that took rates down to zero on the front end of the curve. And so we're 2 years ago when we were beginning to invest the portfolio, the Fed funds rate was at 1.5% to 2%. It's now at 0 to 0.25%. So a much different market environment. That being said, we are seeing obviously a pretty significant recovery in the economy. The unemployment rates come down pretty significantly. You certainly have seen a recovery from the housing market, auto market, everything other than really leisure and transportation has really recovered. And so when you look at the slide that's on here, you can see where rates have been and where the projection is going forward. We expect rates to stay low for the next year to 2 years. The Fed is basically showing that out to 2023, they're expecting rates not to move from where they are now. The market is in agreement with that, but we are seeing significant pickups in GDP, and the projection from the Fed is certainly backing that up, giving us some reason to think that, a year to 2 years out, there is a potential that the Fed may start unwinding QE. Rates may start drifting higher as long as we get closer to full employment. And in that scenario, you do want adjustable rate coupons. If rates start moving up, you want your securities in your portfolio to move up along with them. And so this part of the reason we want to preemptively bring this up, we want to make sure we're ahead of it in case the market environment changes. We've obviously taken advantage of the higher rates until March of last year. But we want to be prepared for a new rate environment, which likely at this point, given where rates are, will be a rising rate environment somewhere in the next couple of years. When we look at the recovery, I mentioned that a little bit. You can see the slide here basically talks about the steepness of the yield curve. What that really means is we're basically saying if you took the 10-year Treasury and you subtracted the Fed funds rate from it, what does that equation give you? When that's negative, it means you've got an inverted yield curve that typically is a precursor to a recession. We've seen that multiple times throughout history, which shows on this chart. When it turns around and you start going back up, which is what we're seeing here in the last year or 6 months to a year, that's telling you the economy is getting better. Long rates are moving higher. The Fed is obviously at zero, and so it's showing you that the economy is growing again, it's healing. You've kind of gotten through this recessionary period, and it's a sign that we're seeing a recovery. And then the last part that we like to look at is the unemployment rate. Obviously, when you look at the far right of this chart, you'll see, the volatility of it was something we haven't seen before, simply due to what happened with COVID, the shutdown of the economy, the forced furloughs of employees, et cetera. But we have seen a pretty significant recovery down to where we're now under 7% unemployment. Full employment's typically somewhere between 4 to 4.5%. So we're a couple percentage points away from that. Likely it will take 6 to 9 months to a year to get there, if not a little bit longer. We're at the point now where the sticky jobs that are the hardest to get filled are what's remaining. Typically you need, at the end of a recovery, you need people to be retrained, different skill levels. You need to get people back into the labor force that completely dropped out. And so that takes a little bit longer, but the first part of it, the initial recovery has largely been completed. And so we're now back to a level here where we would expect those final couple quarters of recovery to happen. One of the things we look at is on this chart that you're seeing right now in front of you, which is job openings. Obviously, when you see furloughs and things like that, those are jobs that are laid off and then they're brought back by the same employer. Those don't go into job openings. What does show up in job openings are those last jobs that I just mentioned, where you have people that have been laid off either permanently or long term, and they are now getting back into the workforce. There's got to be an opening for them. And so we're watching that very carefully to see that number spike. And when job openings spike, you would expect the unemployment rate to come down pretty significantly. We're not there yet, but as I said, we're trying to preemptively get ahead of this because we've seen kind of that first initial wave of recovery happen. It's been pretty strong, and we would expect in the next 1 to 2 years for the Fed to come out and say, okay, we're thinking about the rate environment might need to be a little bit higher. We might need to take QE off, and we want the portfolio in place for that time period. So with that, I guess I would take any questions anybody has on the portfolio or the recommendation we're making.
Well, Matt, I just want to say thank you. I'm going to be able to sleep better tonight now that you've cleared up all my questions relative to what the economy is going to do. So if I got a spare $100 to invest, I feel a lot better in the direction I'm going to go. And actually, obviously, I'm just trying to be funny, but I do appreciate the very simple data you gave us there to give us some indication of why this is a good move. And Mr. Mayor, I'm going to offer a motion that we approve Resolution 022101, approving this revision to the investment policy.
All right, we have a motion to approve Resolution 022101. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, call the roll.
Alderman Lindell,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft,
Alderman Kraft.
Yes, they had me on mute, I think.
and Alderman Kittle. He
All
was
right,
going to be
that motion
relogging in.
passes. So item 8.2 is the mayoral appointments. Alderperson Craig Kittle to Utilities Commission and Mary Kay Rice to Joint Review Board.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve those mayoral appointments as stated.
So there's a motion to approve the appointments. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second
I'll
it.
second it.
Right, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, call the roll.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft.
Yes.
Alderman Kittle, Alderman Lindell.
Yes.
Item 8.3 is the Plan Commission recommendation, annexation application of 1728 County Road A. It would be ordinance 548.
All right, good evening, Mayor and City Council. For the next three items, we have the Plan Commission items, and Noah and I will be tag teaming. I'll take the first two items and Noah will take the last one. We first of all have had an application for an annexation petition from Travis Helland for 1728 County Road A. The process we develop for annexations is it goes to the Development Review Committee. We have a public notice in the paper. We had the Plan Commission and public hearing on February 2nd, and it goes to the City Council at tonight's meeting for approval of the annexation and an ordinance approval. Rayanne, can you move the slides ahead one? The site plan and site location for the annexation is it's located off of County Road A, and it is a 3.56 acre parcel. The surrounding uses are Richmond Township, which has single family lots to the north and the west, Willow River Bluffs, and Richmond Township lots to the south. And what we're going to be asking for access to and out of the property will be coming off of County Road A only. The comprehensive plan for this site guides us for single family residential or low density residential. Basically, this development can have single family townhomes, infill development, and this will be able to be served by our city utilities. The zoning for this property is proposed to be Z4 zoning. There is surrounding this property, that same district Z4, and there's Z2 on a portion of it on the opposite sides. This allows residential and neighborhood commercial uses for the site. And the development for this site would need to go through our zoning subdivision applications. It would either need a site plan application or a conditional use application based on what they're bringing in. And we can move, there we go. And so the Development Review Committee and the Plan Commission recommend approving this annexation. Basically, the property owner is petitioning for annexation. The subject site is contiguous to all of the city jurisdiction. The utilities and street access are available to the site, and the annexation will allow for orderly growth and development of the city. In past practices, to encourage annexation, the city has recommended paying for the fees to the state and waiving any city fees, and we would ask the same for the city council recommendation for this evening. So what we're looking for the annexation is approving the ordinance, which is Ordinance 548 with a motion, and then adding on to that waiving of the fees and paying for the state fees to allow these folks to annex in. And I'll take any questions.
Beth, are you
Beth,
looking for a motion right now, or are you thinking that you want to go through all of the Plan Commission recommendations first?
Alderman Kraft, I would like a motion on each recommendation. So we would start with this one with a motion, and then we would move on to the next one and then have a motion.
Okay. Well, then I would make a motion that we adopt ordinance, I think you said 548, annexing the property at 1728 County Road A to the city of New Richmond and waiving all applicable annexation fees.
And suspend the rules.
And suspend the rules.
All right, so we have a motion to approve the ordinance 548, suspend the rules,
I'll second that.
pass the, we're going to suspend the fees. I think you also said to pay the state fees. Is that correct, Beth?
That is correct. That's past practice, so we can encourage annexation. Correct.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, call the roll.
Alderman Montello. Alderman Volkert.
Yes.
Alderman Kraft.
Yes.
Alderman Kittle.
Yes.
Alderman Lindell.
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier.
Yes.
All right, and that passes. Item 8.4 is the Plan Commission recommendation, final plat for Willow River Bluffs.
Thank you. Willow River Bluffs has applied for their final plat for the Willow River Bluffs area. It's their second edition. The process for this is it went to the Development Review Committee. It then goes to the Plan Commission, which it did on the 2nd, and now to City Council for final approval. The comprehensive plan on that site guides this. It's in the same area as the annexation. It guides it for low density residential. It will be able to be served by city utilities, and it calls for single family lots consistent with the land use plan. The zoning for the area is zoned Z2. Previously in 2019, we pulled a PUD district forward, so they have some PUD standards that are also in here. It's single family lots, and there is 23 of them. As you'll
Mr.
see,
Mayor,
this was as you'll see, that was the preliminary plat, which was approved in 2019. And the final plat looks very similar to the preliminary plat, obviously. Basically, it's going to be Z2 district standards. We do have construction of the streets and the utilities, and the park dedication fees have already been covered. So Mike, I'll let you take it from here because I think I know what you're going to do.
Mr. Mayor, I offer a motion that we approve the final plat of Willow River Bluffs, subject to the following, or the 8 conditions that are outlined in our packet.
Thank you.
There's a motion to approve the final plat. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, call the roll.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft.
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Lindell,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello.
Yes.
And that motion passes. Item 8.5, preliminary and final plat for the Richmond Cemetery.
Good evening, Mayor Horn and City Council. The last item from the Plan Commission meeting last week is for the preliminary and final plat for the Richmond Cemetery. This item also was reviewed by the Public Works Committee at their meeting last week. As you may recall, this was discussed earlier in the fall about having a designated area for preterm pregnancy loss in the Richmond area cemetery. This would be known as Lullaby Lane. So the plat that's included in your packets and that you see up on the screen in front of you has a total of 56 lots. So it would be created. Each lot is 2.5 feet wide by 3 feet long. So these are smaller lots than what you would see throughout the rest of the cemetery. And the Public Works Committee has reviewed policies that would be in place in terms of lot purchase price and some of the regulations regarding headstones and those sorts of things. Otherwise, the plat process for cemetery is guided by the state. This still gets recorded with the County Register of Deeds, just like regular plat. However, this is somewhat unique in that the lots don't have to have street frontage and things like you would see in a residential or commercial development. The recommendation from the Public Works Committee and the Plan Commission is to approve the preliminary and final plat as presented. This has also been reviewed by Halos of the St. Croix Valley, which has worked very hard to help make this possible. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Mr. Mayor, I offer a motion that we approve the preliminary and final plat for Lullaby Lane section in the Richmond Cemetery. And I just want to thank the work that Halos of New Richmond has done. I just think it's just good that we have this recognition. So for those preterm lives lost.
I would
So
second
there's a
that motion.
All right, so we have a motion and a second for the preliminary and final plat for Lullaby Lane. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, call the roll.
Alderman Kraft.
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Lindell,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert.
Yes. And that motion passes. Item 8.6 is the Police Department building renovations.
Mayor Horn and City Council, I will kind of kick off the conversation. Then I'll turn it over to Lieutenant Kaler, who's here in the council chambers. And we also have Chief Fielick available, who's participating virtually on the meeting tonight. Just for some background information, the current facility at 1443 Campus Drive was purchased in late 2011. Previously, some of you may recall it was the S&C Bank. No improvements have been made to the facility since that time. This project has been discussed for the past few years as part of the CIP, as we've talked about other capital projects. In the fall of 2020, City Council authorized staff to obtain quotes for a preliminary design service, and that was approved in December. That contract was with Ayers Associates. And then the last week, members of the City Council have had the opportunity to tour the current facility, provide some feedback regarding the preliminary design, and Ayers has provided some estimates for the cost as well. Tonight, we're not looking to finalize the design. Really, the action tonight to move the project forward would be approving the contract with Ayers on the amount of $95,000.
Fire department's getting busy. Sorry.
The services with Ayers will be paid using impact fees. that are designated for public facilities. As part of this contract, heirs would prepare the final design and construction plans for bidding the project. And when the project would be bid out later on, they would also provide the construction administration with the city and the contractors. So really their contract kind of takes that preliminary design and really turns it more into construction ready documents that people can bid on. And as part of the final design process, I think it'd be a great opportunity for the council who may be interested to actually talk about some of the options and some of the feedback that you've had when you toured the facility and have looked at the preliminary design. And, you know, they can talk about what some different options may look, what impact that may have, and in terms of functionality, in terms of cost, et cetera. So at a future meeting, we would approve the final design and then authorize the bidding. So tonight would just be the contract with heirs. In terms of public engagement, a lot of our projects have had extensive neighborhood meetings, street or park planning, for example. There's other projects that have not. One would be the current, we have a $3 million renovation for the wastewater treatment plant underway. So sometimes it is a little bit project specific. In this case, obviously we can't have members of the public walking back in the police department. But we would plan to have a display here at City Hall, which is now open again, regular business hours. We'd put some photos display showing the current conditions for those who'd like to walk in, stop by the Civic Center and look at those, as well as some of the preliminary designs. With that, just for a project overview, I will turn things over to Lieutenant Kaler.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As each of you are able to see, walking through the police department, currently we have 2 lockers in the female locker room and 10 in the males locker room. We currently have on staff 6 females and 14 males. We do not have showers at the police department. The project would allow us to have showers in the locker rooms. The evidence processing and storage area, the processing room currently is at the Civic Center, and that would be brought down to the police department. We'd have increased storage space in the evidence room itself. The ammunition and gun cleaning area, currently we just have a table in the back that's set up where we clean our firearms. They would have a separate room for that and to store the ammunition. Right now it's stored with other equipment and records. We'd relocate the intoximeter to have a separate entrance to go into the garage area, so the public doesn't have to come into our police department into the squad room where it currently is located. There are also no public bathrooms, so if somebody comes in from the public that needs to use the bathrooms, they're using the same ones that we are. We also fingerprint people, and they would have we would set that up in the intox room also, so it would be a separate entrance, so we wouldn't have to bring them into the police department. The garage itself would provide officer safety. We'd be out of the public view when we're doing squad checklists. And walking in and out of the police department. The squads could be shut down between shifts. Currently, in the weather like we're having right now, they're running 24/7. And then this would provide also an area behind a fenced-in area that would be a secure or a more secure area for employee parking. Is there any questions or anything for me on that?
Then Chief Ehrlich is participating by phone. We'll talk about some of the project goals. Unless you have anything specifically. Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and
If you
Council.
want to talk about the goals.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, first off, I'd like to, specifically thank Pat Becker and Alderman Montello when they kind of kicked us off last fall. They came in and offered us some really good insight on the functionality and the safety that we were looking for. They actually offered kind of a unique perspective from a non-law enforcement entities to kind of guide us through what was important and what wasn't, from a public safety standpoint as well as public perception standpoint. So I really appreciate their input. And what we kind of came up with was that, the locker room issue and the evidence storage areas were very much important to everybody at the police department. And I think a lot of people were focused on the garage, which was kind of secondary in nature to what we were looking to accomplish. However, it is very important, and from a safety standpoint and functionality, as you saw in the previous slide, one of the squad cars during one of our snowstorms, in weather like this, when we get a wheel well that's packed like that, it improves the handling of the vehicle. It improves in, and what we can do and how we can respond safely. And it just doesn't melt out of there very quickly. We need above freezing temperatures to remedy that problem currently, or we have to take a squad car out of service. So, in talking with Alderman Montello and Pat Becker, that kind of back to the police department we felt really needed some attention, and that became kind of our project goal along with the garage. We think that this project goal, or the project, provides basic facilities for law enforcement. It basically turns a bank building into a functional police department. It offers our officers the ability to do their jobs, similar to the fire and EMS. None of their vehicles in those two entities sit outside for long periods of time. They're ready for emergency response. And we're just looking to afford the citizens of New Richmond that same level of service from the New Richmond Police Department. It also helps with recruitment and retention on high quality employees. Having a safe place to go to work, having a place that's functional and efficient is a desire of kind of that element that's coming into law enforcement right now. So those are some of the project goals. I really also want to thank Sergeant Jake Sather and Lieutenant Kaler for all their work on this. They've done a lot of research. They've been to some other police departments and looking at the facilities that they have. And then also a special thanks to the mayor and council for taking time out of your busy schedule last week to come down and see the facility firsthand and offer feedback. And, we're committed to providing a functional process that meets the needs of the police department and be as fiscally responsible as we can to the taxpayers of the city of Richmond. So I guess with that, between Noah and Veronica and I, we can try to answer some of your questions.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Lieutenant. Just a couple of things, kind of my observations. And I know, Lieutenant, you got into probably a little bit more of the details than I will be focused on right now. But for the sake of the public understanding, what it is that we're trying to see happen down at the police department, I'm just going to draw your attention to 4 things that I think need to be rectified. The locker room situation that we have down there presently, we do not have enough space for the employees of the police department that we currently have in the rooms that are there. Not everybody has a locker. There is no bathroom facilities, shower facilities that are inside those rooms. In fact, you do not have a shower at the police department. And this was kind of put into a stark example, which actually, unfortunately, is probably all too common in law enforcement, where you get somebody's bodily fluids on your uniform, and your option really is pretty limited to how you're going to clean that off. And so that's a super important thing, that we provide a safe space so that we're not asking members of the department to go home with what could be a biohazard on their uniform to deal with it there. Also, the fact that the locker rooms don't have, I guess code right now is a double door situation where somebody can't just open the door and you're looking right, which is what it is today. And it actually sits, if memory serves me right, it's almost kind of a central part of the department down there. It's not something that nobody would have a reason to be standing right outside the door because of the way the space is. So that's one thing, the goal to get that corrected. And when Pat Becker and I went through the police department last fall, again, the focus was on these 4 things, not meaning that these other things aren't important. But just to draw your attention to these 4 things. The police department is currently processing drugs. Am I allowed to say this, Lieutenant? Here at City Hall, because the police department used to be here and that room never got moved. And there's not a question, it's a fact, that the current HVAC system in this building does not differentiate between that processing room and the rest of the building. So there are concerns there, not to mention the fact of not having it all under one roof, if you will. We've got 2 different locations and they're not next to each other to do that kind of processing. So what we're talking about would rectify those 2 things. Another thing that was apparent to Pat Becker and I last fall, looking at, and I'm going to say it wrong, I call it the DWI processing area. You call it, I think, an intoximeter, where people basically do a breath test. The way it is right now, you have it set up in the PD. It's in a big room. That's part of the police department. And you have a desk with items from officers on it where this area is. It's not a secure area as such. So that's a 3rd thing that would get fixed by this. And then the last thing, and I don't mean to say this in order of priority, but if people like to hear it that way, so be it, is some type of indoor facility, a garage, where it isn't just that cars can be brought in out of the weather, although Chief, I appreciate that you brought that up as a challenge. It's also the idea that if you're processing evidence, if you have a suspect, somebody you've apprehended and you need to process them at the police department to whatever extent that is, if the weather's bad, people got to get out outside and work their way into the building, which includes the officers. So there's a very great need. I think that, so it's good that we're moving forward with this. I do think it's super important that we have some more structured input as to the, and I know we have a drawing kind of on a potential design, but I think there's been a lot of great discussion over the last week's time about this and that. And I think it would be great if we could set up those members of the council that want to be involved to meet with heirs. And I think the sooner we can do that, the better, so they can kind of continue on. And then last but not least, I do think it's great that we can have stuff set up down here at City Hall so that people, the public, can come in and see what we're doing and what we're talking about. And so everybody understands we're not talking about committing to spending this money tonight. We're committing to the intention to spend the money. We got a few more boxes we got to check, and what tonight's action hopefully will allow us just to move forward and take those next steps. But I think as we have the information available, if these plans, you know, if they're going to change somewhat or whatever, but we can have those on display, and I would just encourage the public to come down to City Hall, look at them, so you can be well informed of what we're talking about.
Thank you, Alderman Mike. So I agree with Mike. There's a lot of things that need to be upgraded down there at the police station. I went down, I provided feedback. You know, as it was pointed out, you know, fire and ambulance have upgraded facilities for training or locker rooms. This kind of gets into a dignity issue, especially looking at the changing rooms, the way they're set up down there. You know, it's just, to me, it's a dignity issue that needs to be rectified. The other feedback I gave was about the evidence room. In my opinion, I think the evidence room needs to be enlarged. If that's a word, it needs a bigger room than what is being proposed, in my opinion. The garage, I think, can be a bit more efficient, is the feedback I gave. So that's why I wholeheartedly agree with Mike. Let's sit down with heirs and with whoever Alderman wants to come on down and have a little more discussion. You know, police-wise, non-police-wise, we all can understand what the needs are for the garage and the functional design of that facility.
So to that end, Mr. Mayor, I just want to add, and maybe somebody else has got a comment there, but I just want to add to that. I would really encourage that this communication with heirs happens sooner than later, because I actually think it's something that needs to happen so the rest of the process can take place. We really need to get that squared away so they know what they're bidding. But I think there was some great feedback that you got last week from various members of the council relative to maybe some slight changes that would be better use of the space that you have there. So I just think it would be super helpful if we could do that soon. So I'm prepared to offer a motion, but I don't want to curtail if one of our members who is on virtually have an opportunity. So have at it.
Thank you, Mike. This is Alderman Kraft. I really just want to echo what Mayor Horn and Alderman Montello said. Thank you so much for the opportunity to come down to the police department and have a tour and really kind of look at the functionality of the space. I think we can all agree that although you have made it work over the course of the last couple of years, it certainly isn't functioning as effectively or efficiently or as safely, to be honest, as it should be. I completely agree that getting the locker room space up to code, not only, to ensure people's dignity when they're in there, but also, we want to make sure that we have the facilities that can reduce any kind of exposure to the biohazards that we know has actually happened for people. I was unpleasantly brought into reality when I looked at your processing area for drugs and also for cleaning your firearms. It is nothing short of an injustice of that space. So I would really like to see something significantly improved in that processing area, both for suspects and for any drug or anything else that you're bringing in. The evidence room, I would agree that, it probably has to be even a little bit bigger than it currently is. I know that you'll probably have some increase in, storage efficiency just with moving the space, but, the likelihood is that you will continue to grow and get more evidence that needs to be processed. And then seeing something for firearm storage and ammunition storage, I think is really, really important. So I was really happy with the design that AIRS put forth. I certainly wouldn't consider myself a police department design expert, but I believe that things were thoughtfully developed with the police department's best interest in mind. So thank you for the opportunity again to come down and see that.
Thank you. Craig or Kurt, any comments?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I had a good conversation with Craig today. I think my issue is not with the need. My issue is with I would like to do it in segments. And if that doesn't make sense, if AIRS tells us that would cost a lot more and it doesn't make sense to do it in parts financially, I think that would help the city if we could do it in 2 separate budget years. But if it doesn't work out that way, the need is clearly there. I don't think anybody has an issue with the need for everything. The parking is an issue. There's a lot of issues. It's a bank building that we got for a good price, and in order for us to put up a full-size police garage would be $3, $4, $5 million. So to put this kind of money into a building that can be utilized for the police department with a price tag of this level, I think it's a good idea and a good investment.
Alderman Kittle, if I could just add, I think to clarify something you just said. You said a police garage. What you meant was if you were building a whole police department, $3 to $4 million.
Yeah.
I didn't want anybody to think we were talking about a $3 to $4 million project here. And I know that's not what you meant, but if it's all right, I just wanted to clear that up.
No. Yeah, if we started over from scratch like River Falls is doing right now, I think River Falls is spending $5 million on just the police garage and the police department and the offices. I think this is for what we got the building for, and what we can turn this building into. I still think is a great investment for the city residents.
Any other comments?
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to offer a motion that we approve the contract with AIRS Associates for final architectural and engineering services which it's in the packet as to what that includes. I think Noah said the price tag.
It's
estimate-
95,000.
95,000 for this. But as a condition of that, that there would be a meeting or meetings, I guess whatever is necessary to get to a point where we've got a design we're comfortable with, that any member of the council wants to be on that, that they can. And I think there's the design, questions, tweaks, whatever you want to call it. I think that Alderman Kittle's brought up a good point about, the feasibility of doing it in stages. We need to answer that question, whether that makes sense or not financially. So I think that's all part of that discussion. And so, but I am recommending with that caveat that we set that meeting up for any member of the council that wants to sit in on that and have some input with it. That's my motion.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor to move ahead with heirs, approving their contract with the condition of a meeting set up for aldermen, whatever aldermen want to participate in a discussion of a final floor plan ideas and that type of stuff. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll
I'll
second it.
second that.
All right, we have a motion, a second, and a third. Is there any discussion?
Mayor, my background in construction and architecture technology in college. I'd like to be on the committee to meet with heirs.
It's open to everyone, every council member, and encouraged. Any other discussion?
No, I don't have.
All right. Any other discussion? Call the roll.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Lindell,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft.
All right, and that motion passes. Item 8.7 is the 2021 Capital Improvement Plan update.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Again, on this item in your packet tonight, there is no action that's being requested. It simply just wants to serve as an update. We'll provide these updates on an ongoing basis related to the capital improvement plan. The full plan, again, is attached to the packet for your reference of those projects if there were specific questions. But for the purpose of this memo, we really just wanted to highlight projects that have either been approved already, projects that are currently in a bid development or in a bid process, and then lastly, ones that have not quite started yet. So just to kind of go over some brief numbers here, the 2021 capital improvement plan has about just under $3 million in project initiatives. 209,000 in projects to date have been approved. There's 1.6 million in projects that are either in the quoting or bid development phase, and then 625,000 that have not started yet. While some of those projects that are currently in bid or in development stage, we don't have a finalized cost on yet. The planned debt issuance that we still are targeting is 1.875 million, which would be anticipated to occur later this spring or early summer once we solidify street and utility project costs, as well as municipal software costs and other components that were part of that borrowing aspect of things as well. There are a couple of projects that will come up and have been in the Public Works Committee in discussion as well and are on the council's agenda tonight that have some that are a little bit above what budget is. But again, I think that there are certain projects right now that we're seeing that might come in under budget. So again, holistically, we're targeting that 1.875. And at this point in time, I don't see us needing to change that number given what we have to date. But again, we still have street and utility projects out there that we don't have final bids on yet. So just again, wanted to highlight where we're at. With the passage of the purchasing policy tonight as well, Dependent upon some of the valuations of each of these projects, they'll be in various boards and commissions and working their way through that approval process as well. So again, we just want to provide the update. If there's any questions from the council, I'd be happy to address those.
Brian, I appreciate the time spent putting this all together. I just want to make, and I already put this question to you, I already got the answer, but to everyone else's benefit, just because something's listed in there, and you may have said that, doesn't mean that it's approved to be done. I just want to, because there's a lot of things in there. And somebody could say, oh, we're doing that. We haven't decided. Some of the stuff's basically decided on, some of it is not. So I just want to make sure folks are reading that. Just because it's listed there doesn't mean that it's going to happen this year or even necessarily at all. So I just wanted to make that distinction. Yep. But thank you.
Anybody have any questions?
I have a question. Does this take into consideration any revenues from land sales for 2021 that any of these projects would go through or not go through?
So there are two projects right now, Craig, or Alderman Kittle, that are identified as potential uses of those funds. Again, I believe that's the ordinance update and then a housing study as part of the land sale proceeds. But again, that hasn't been solidified, and as part of that, the council had asked that those projects be brought back once a land sale would occur, so that the council can determine how those funds would be appropriated into the future. So those are the two projects I think that Alderman Montello too was addressing. Those land sale proceeds, the council has not determined how those will be utilized yet, and we'll bring that back at a later date for discussion.
Okay. And one other question.
Sure.
Which portion of these, I'm trying to read here, is the portion that we had as a surplus from last year's budget? Is it just that first page? The 209?
Good question.
Or is it more than that?
No, so collectively, there is just under $500,000 that would be using surplus funds and levied dollars through the capital replacement levy.
Okay.
So the projects that I have listed in the three graphs was not focused on the funding source.
Yep.
But mainly the projects that have been authorized to date are utilizing either the capital replacement levy funds or will be from 2020 surplus funds.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, hearing none. Item 8.8, the city website redesign.
Mayor and council, in your packets, we have outlined kind of the process and the time frame. Back in 2012 is when the city's current website was put into place. Obviously, since then, there's been operational changes. There's been different varying needs from our residential customers, from our residents of how we deliver services. And our current website doesn't rise to the occasion to meet those growing needs, as well as it's out of compliance from an ADA perspective. So in 2019, there are a vast number of website providers out there. We looked at website providers that service the municipal sector, as well as others, and really focused in on three areas or three providers: Civic Plus, Revise, and Gov Office, which is who the city currently has for our current website. And through that process and that evaluation, two of those platforms really rose to the top of the field, that being Civic Plus and Revise, to address all of the needs that we see for the city to date. So with COVID, this project was put on halt, as well as the municipal software piece of the project as well. But where we're at today, we feel strongly that we need to have this update in the website to have a better delivery to our residents. It provides a multitude of improvements from a scheduling, accepting campground reservations, accepting park and rec facility reservations, and just ease of payment. Forms can be integrated within this new website platform, and various other aspects as well. So tonight we are seeking recommendation to move forward with this project. It would involve about a 6 to 9 month implementation. The cost for the first year is $15,400. And then on an annual basis, the website renewal is $3,900. Revise does have a lower cost up front than Civic Plus and a little bit higher annual cost year over year, but we felt Revise from a ease of use and the ability that we as staff have to be able to control and do some administrative functions was higher than Civic Plus, which is why we are recommending Revise this evening.
Brand, I think it would be helpful for the council to, this is kind of the first swing at this. I think it would be helpful if this is something that we could discuss, maybe get into a little bit deeper with all the stuff that's in the agenda tonight, like at the work session. And I think it would be helpful if somebody could say, you know, you talk about ADA compliant. What on earth does that look like? And don't mistake my comments. The first time I heard that, somebody was talking about websites in general need to be ADA compliant. I don't even know what that, I know what ADA compliant means. I have no idea what it means relative to a website. And I just think it would be great if we could get into the weeds a little bit more relative to this. So I'm not,
And
I
a
just,
demonstration of some of these other sites that they've done and that type of stuff. Some of the best practices with other communities, but I agree with Mike. I think it's a great initial review to the council, but I think it needs more time to be digested.
so I'm just going to offer a motion that we table this until the work session, which is in a couple weeks, to go into it deeper.
There's a motion to table. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
There's a motion and a second. Call the roll.
Alderman Lindell,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft.
Yes.
Alderman Kittle.
Yes.
All right, and that is tabled. Item 8.9 is ordinance 547, prohibiting compression jake breaking.
Mayor and council, this item was brought to our attention based on some complaints from property owners up along Highway 64. Currently, we do not have an ordinance against compression breaking or jake breaking. This item was reviewed at the Public Works Committee last week. They recommend approval of ordinance 547 in your packet, which would prohibit compression or jake breaking within the city.
Mr. Mayor, I want to offer a motion that we approve ordinance number 547. Is that a suspend the rules?
Yes.
And suspend the rules. That jake breaking just wakes me up when it happens in the middle of the night. So yeah, we don't want that in town.
All right, there is a motion to approve ordinance 547 and suspend the rules. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
You'll second it. All right. Any discussion? Call the roll.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft.
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Lindell.
Yes.
That motion passes. Item 8.10 is Public Works Committee recommendation pickup truck award.
And Mayor and council, I believe Dave Pufall and Eric Evenson from Public Works should be on virtually to take these next few items.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So in the month of January, we sent out purchase proposals for requesting proposals for pickup trucks. We received a proposal from Bernard's for a 2021 Dodge Ram 2500 and also a bid from Johnson's Ford for a 2021 Ford 3/4 ton. This would be replacing our 2009 Dodge Ram that currently has 66,000 miles on it. This was part of our capital improvement plan. We had brought this to the Public Works Committee February 3rd, and the recommendation was to move forward with the bids from Bernard's. If I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
I have a question, Dave.
Sure.
Is this the $30,215? Is that a fleet price?
Yes, that's the state contract price.
Okay.
And actually, if I can, the correct way to say it's a municipal bid. There is a slight difference, but to your question, Alderman Kittle, it does come under that kind of umbrella.
So the same as the fire department new truck?
Those are all done as municipal bids. That is correct.
Okay, thank you. I would make a motion that we recommend that the bid from Bernard's Northtown for $30,215.
I will second
Alright.
that.
There's a motion and a second to go with Bernard's for $30,215. Any discussion? Call the roll.
Alderman Montello,
Abstain.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft.
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Lindell,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier.
Yes.
And that motion passes. Item 811, the Public Works Committee recommendation, a street sweeper award.
So beginning kind of early last fall, we started demoing two different sweepers. One was a global sweeper and the other one is a Pelican. We had staff kind of go through, we had each one for a few days, kind of go through and identify the pros and cons of those. And this would be replacing our 2005 Elgin sweeper. The main concern with that one is just the high hours that it's starting to get. It's approaching 9,000 hours, which is beyond the life expectancy of it. So we requested bids for those and received one from Koenig and Sons for a 2021 Global M3 sweeper. Their bid came in at $232,000 with a 2-year warranty. And McQueen submitted a bid for a 2021 Elgin Pelican sweeper for $230,419 with a 1-year warranty. I just wanted to take maybe a couple brief minutes and kind of discuss the differences that we found between them. The Global gets about twice the fuel economy that the Pelican does. What that means is over a 10-year ownership period, it's probably going to save $30,000 to $35,000 in diesel fuel. The top speed on the Global is 25 miles an hour versus 20, and it's able to do that because it has twice the horsepower. And where we really notice it is when the hopper is full of debris. The Pelican tends to bog down to about half of that. Goes from 20 miles to about 10 miles an hour. So as the operators are driving around town with the hopper full of debris, it just increases our time and it's not as efficient. another big difference between the two is the Global has a full suspension system. And what that allows is just more comfort for the operator if you're in there for 8 to 9 hours a day. The cab is on the Global is entirely different. You have much better visibility, and obviously for staff and just residents in general, it's safer for that operator to be able to see everybody. It's more centered in the cab versus the Pelican is off to, you'd be sitting in the passenger seat essentially. And the turning is much different on them. Is they're both a 3-wheel sweeper, but the Global steers from the front. So it's much like driving a car, whereas the Pelican steers from the rear. So just making radiuses and corners, and if you have new operators in there, it's more of a learning curve to operate the Pelican than the Global. The Global has a sharper turning radius, just allows for better maneuvering and going around traffic and cars. Stainless steel hopper bottom in the Global, which that's where all your debris and salt and sand and everything is sitting. So that bottom will never rust out on it. The kind of some of the wear and tear items on it too, they just have a better warranty. Dirt shoes are 1,000 hours on those versus a Pelican. We're only going to get maybe 80 to 100 hours on them. So you're looking at dirt shoes on the Global lasting 10 times longer. So yeah, we had brought this to the Public Works Committee on February 3rd with the recommendation of moving forward with the Global sweeper. So I can take any questions.
Yeah, Dave, this is Alderman Montello. I'm just curious that I understand your reasoning for why you want to go with the Global one. I'm curious about I don't know if we're calling it bid number 3, the McQueen 2021 Elgin Pelican with the trade-in. So that's the only bid that you have that shows a trade-in for the street sweeper, if I'm reading that right. Looks like 40 grand to me. And that's not addressed in either of the first 2 bids, but let's go to the one that you're recommending, that Koenig and Sons. What is the planned disposition of the existing street sweeper?
So as part of the request for proposals, we did not request a trade-in value of our current sweeper. McQueen submitted one, but it wasn't a requirement. So what we would do with our current one is we would declare it surplus and auction it.
Well, I guess the reason I'm asking the question is would be dang confusing to somebody to just look at this and say, wow, 232 plus the warranty to 190. Well, that's not apples and apples. I mean, forget the fact that it's different street sweepers. I got that. But that $190,000 is including $40,000 for your existing street sweeper, which isn't even part of the calculation in the one that you're recommending to get. So my question to you is, I understand but do you have a sense of what that machine is worth? I mean, is that $40,000 number? Is that something you'd hope to get out of it, selling it as surplus equipment? So again, it's just not apples and apples. That's my point is 232 versus 190. Well, one includes $40,000 for the credit for your existing machine. I'm sorry, I did ask you a question. What do you think the street sweeper, your existing one, is worth?
Yeah, and you're right. It's not 100% apples to apples. That's kind of why I focused on the other ones. Truthfully, the 40,000 that's an attractive offer. My thoughts were always, my goal is to get at least 30,000 for it. That's my target.
So what we're calling bids 2 and 3, I guess, that's the same machine. One's just showing a trade-in. Is that correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
Dave, this is Alderman Lindell, and I was, we were at the Public Works Committee, and I've said this before at these meetings, and I'm going to say it again. that if it was my money we were spending, and you consider the fact that they're offering 40 as a trade-in, we'd only get 30 on the surplus market. When you put those numbers together with the warranty, there's a $50,000 difference between the two bids. And that's a tough nut for me to swallow. I'm just speaking for myself. 50,000 is a lot of money. And that's why I wanted to make sure all three bids came to the council meeting, and that's what I want people to consider, I guess.
Alderman Lindell, I need you to explain the math to me. This is Mike.
Well, if you take,
because you just said it's 30,000 versus 40, so there's 10 grand in difference. And the machine
Right.
has, the Koenig & Sons is basically $1,500 more. So now we're at 11,500 and the warranty is 10,000. So it's 21,500. So I didn't understand your reference to 50.
well, I was looking at the 232 plus the 13 for the warranty, which gets you up to 245, right?
Yep.
Okay. And then you have the 190. So plus the warranty, so that's 192, I believe. Make it 193. So anyway, that's the difference of, don't make me do this in my head like this. It's bad news. Say that's the difference.
One has a trade-in value.
46 versus 190.
Right.
Yeah, but the difficulty is that the 193, your math is good to that point, but the 193 includes $40,000 for the street sweeper. Dave
Well,
thinks it's
right,
worth
but-
30,000.
Well,
So
right,
really,
so-
you have to put that in there. And I understand the 30,000 is not a guarantee, but if we just take that number on paper, we're talking about 10 plus, 10 plus, it's like 21,000 is actually the difference. And I'm not sitting here, Kirk, saying, well, that's nothing to sneeze at. I don't mean that. But I just, again, for anybody listening, it isn't 50,000 because one includes the trade-in in the machine. The other one doesn't even, but if we're going to account for the 30 that Dave thinks it's worth, but Dave, I'm going to put the question to you. Can we ask Koenig for a number on our machine? Is it trade-in?
We can. I think I want to clear up something though. Is the 13,970 from Koenig & Sons for the extended warranty is not being recommended, nor is the 2,750 from McQueen. So that we get a 2-year warranty automatically with the purchase, and I would recommend probably not moving forward with the extended warranty part of it. So we would be looking at a base price of $232,000 for the Koenig & Sons. I certainly can reach out to them and get a price on the sweeper and see where they're at if that's the direction we want to go.
To me, and I think this gets to Alderman Lindell's point. Okay, now we're talking about $12,000, not factoring in trade difference. Sorry, I guess I would be factoring in what you think you can sell it for and what they're offering you on a trade-in. So it would be nice if we could have an apples and apples comparison, especially considering the fact that you don't sound very optimistic that you could sell that for 40,000 as excess equipment. Am I getting that right impression from you?
Yeah, there's no guarantees with an auction. I would likely set the reserve at 30,000 for it though. And I guess one thing to keep in mind though too is, the fuel consumption alone over just 10 years is going to be over $30,000 in savings.
Yeah, for what it's worth, Dave, I'm good with your recommendation in this case, but I understand why Alderman Lindell, I get that as well. And so I'm just saying, is it possible for us to answer the question as to what it would be worth on a trade with Koenig & Sons? So we're not kind of wondering, and I'm not saying you have to trade it in, whatever you do, but I'd just be curious to know if that even makes sense. And it certainly clears up the issue. Let's say that they were going to offer you 40,000 for it. Now all of a sudden we're talking about a $1,500 price difference, which is doesn't merit much discussion. Just doing what you want makes all the sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And thanks, Dave. I thought that the extended warranty was part of the offer and that we were going to purchase that. I did not realize that was optional.
No.
Yeah, sorry about that. I kind of gathered then. I just wanted to clear that part up.
So Dave, do you also, I know in the Public Works meeting, we talked at length about the specifications and what you specifically asked as part of the proposal process to be a part of the street sweeper. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the only sweeper that met the specifications as laid out in that RFP was from Koenig and Sons. So that the McQueen bid did not meet the specifications.
Yes, that's correct. Yep. So and I can, I guess, go over what specs they did not meet. So the Pelican does not meet the horsepower rating or the capacity size for the hopper, to which the hopper size is about 2 cubic yards less. So what that means for the operator is more travel time and less sweeping time. It does not have a load leveling device inside the hopper, so that kind of prevents utilizing that full space. And those are kind of some of the bigger issues.
Thank you.
I have a question, Dave. I know that the comparison of these two we had some really lengthy conversations about this. Do you have an issue at all? I know the McQueen, the Pelican is a lot more popular in this area, a lot more use in this area, a lot more common in this area. Do you have any problem with that at all, as opposed to going with Global or Pelican as to the popularity in the area? You have a problem with that at all?
I don't actually. I went over and kind of toured Koenig and Sons shop just to see kind of what they had, check them out and just be familiar with their mechanics and their layout, what services they can provide us. Rochester is actually switching over to Global. They currently run 6 sweepers, and they're going to be trying one. There are a couple other cities around that have them. I've called their references and checked on them as well. And there's overall, I mean, it sounds like a really good machine. New York City runs only Global. They have 450 units in New York City. So they're kind of big on the East Coast and the West Coast. And I think with time in the Midwest, they're going to be popular.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to offer a motion that we award the bid from Koenig and Sons for the 2021 Global M3 Street Sweeper in the amount of $232, which just comes with a standard warranty that at this point, apparently there's no additional warranty being purchased. But I'm also going to ask that Dave would be able to get a number from Koenig as to what the trade-in value is, and really having a sense of what our used street sweeper is going to be worth.
All right, so there's a motion to approve the Koenig and Sons Global for $232. There's a second to that motion.
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I have some discussion. Do we want to do that with Koenig and Sons prior to? Do we want to accept the bid and then ask them what they'll give us for trade-in, or should we wait on that and ask them what they'll give us for a trade-in when they don't know that they got the bid or not? Would that make more sense, Mike?
Craig, since
I'm
you're
wondering,
retired, Craig, if you're looking for something to do during the day, I got some work for you at the place that I happen to work at. I like the way you think. And I actually would encourage, I think you got a super valid point, and I would encourage Dave, when he communicates with them, he doesn't call them up and say, you got the bid. He says, what is my street sweeper worth? whether it's a trade number or even to give him a sense of, you know, on the market, that's what we think that machine's going to be. I guess I'm just trying to, I think you got a valid point. I'm just trying to communicate. Because Dave, is there some lead time with these things? Because I obviously,
Yes.
What is the lead time?
So Rochester that just ordered theirs, they're expecting theirs in about 90 days.
Oh, that's not bad.
That gets us into the sweeping season. We hope you won't be sweeping snow in 90 days. But anyhow, Craig, I think it's a valid point, and I think Dave, I want you to be able to start moving on this, but it would be great if we could find out if it's something they're even interested in. And Craig's right. Once you tell them they got the bid, the number might be 10 grand because they know they're going to sell you a new machine.
Well, that's because I've been around you long enough.
So we have a work session in 2 weeks. So what I'm hearing, we're going to table this. And Dave, can you have an answer hopefully in 2 weeks?
I don't know that we said we were necessarily tabling the actual approval. I think we have to get some clarity on that, because I do know that, and Dave, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this too. I know we had a long discussion on this. I don't know that Koenig and Sons would actually give us a trade-in value because they don't run those machines. That's not the machines they work on. It's a different machine. So they might be able to give us a ballpark estimate, but I'm guessing you've already gathered that information in preparation for our meeting last week and our meeting tonight.
So are you saying, Alderman Kraft, that they communicated to us that they won't give us a trade number?
It wasn't part of the request for proposals. It was added, I believe, by the, now I'm going to forget the McQueen. I think they added it as kind of an enticement. But what I'm saying is I believe that company, I don't think they run those, but Dave has to answer that question.
Yeah, so Koenig and Son, they are not a Pelican rep, but they will take them in on trade-ins. In fact, when I was there touring their shop, they had a Pelican sitting on their lot. So
I would like to just incentivize them to give us a pretty good price on that. That was my only thinking.
Yeah, I actually, Dave, I guess if this was my transaction to manage, I could see telling them, I think we got support for me to buy the global machine, but they really want to know about the disposition of our existing one. What's the number? And that's what it all hinges upon. I don't know if we do wait for 2 weeks, Dave, is that problematic for you to give you an opportunity to have that conversation with them?
Yeah, it's not a big problem.
I support what you want to do, but I also support the idea that if we can get the other machine moved down the road and maximize our return on it, that would be good as well.
So Craig, do you officially want to make a motion that we table?
Yeah, I'll make a motion. We table this for 2 weeks till the work session, till we find out the disposition of if we can get 40,000 from Koenig and Sons for the trade-in. I think that'd be a good value to us and a lot easier than selling it on the auction. So I make a motion to table.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
There's a motion and a second. Call the roll.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Lindell,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello.
Yes.
All right, and the motion to table passes. Item 812 is the Public Works Committee recommendation, authorization to purchase a new dump truck.
So recently staff has been looking into purchasing or replacing one of our current dump trucks outfitted with plow equipment. The current one we have right now is a 2000 Sterling tandem axle, and I think in the last 6 years, we've exceeded $6,000 in repairs on that truck. The truck itself is in pretty rough shape with a lot of rust and holes starting to form in the box. And the DOT estimates the life expectancy of this machine at 9 years. So we're well beyond that capacity of it. It was identified in the 2021 capital improvement plan to spend $225,000 on a dump truck. Kind of what we're finding out now with everything going on is supply and demand and the increased cost that kind of just keep going up and up. And with that, the lead times are also getting anywhere from 6 months to over a year. So we had taken this to the Public Works Committee meeting on February 3rd to seek authorization to spend up to $250,000 to replace the dump truck. And if a bid, or if approved, we would solicit bids and bring this back to the council at a later time.
So if I understand correctly, what we're doing tonight, if approved, is just authorizing staff to solicit bids. We're actually not committing to spending the money. We're just soliciting bids. Is that your understanding, Dave?
Correct. And I don't know if Fran has anything to add to that.
No, just the clarification, that would just be to solicit the bids.
Okay, then I'm going to offer a motion.
That would allow us to get the
Yep.
actual cost, then understand the gap.
Yep, I'm going to offer a motion that we authorize staff to solicit bids for a new dump truck. And I don't really get the amount part because I guess we're asking for bids, so it'll come in where it comes in, but we understand what you're
Well,
thinking. It's coming at.
The reason we put it this way is because we budgeted for 225. We assume that it's going to be more than that. We just wanted the council to be aware that the 225 may have to go higher because of the situation. That's the reason we put it in there like that.
I appreciate that, Craig. I get it. I mean, I get what
Yep.
you just said. Obviously the bids will be what the bids are, but I appreciate that. You have a budget of 225 and there's a good chance it's going to be more than that.
Right.
All right, we have a motion to go to bids, get bids for a new dump truck. Is there a second to that motion?
I will second that motion.
Any discussion? Call the roll.
Alderman Kraft?
Yes.
Alderman Kittle?
Yes.
Alderman Lindell?
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier?
Yes.
Alderman Montello?
Yes.
Alderman Volkert?
Yes. And that motion passes. Item 813 is the acceptance of proposed functional class changes to roadway system.
Mayor Horn and City Council, every 10 years, as part of the U.S. Census analysis, the Wisconsin Department of Transportation reviews the functional classifications of our local streets. So obviously these can change just based on additional traffic volume, population growth, et cetera. And so the Department of Transportation submitted to us the map and the proposed changes that are included in your packet. Staff recommend approval of those as proposed.
No, just basically, why would a person care if their road they live by gets its classification changed? Does it mean anything?
So two things. One would impact if we were reconstructing a street, what standard that street would be built. So if it's designated as more of an arterial or a collector, the width of that street may change. The other piece would actually be for when the city applies for grant funding, just based on the classification, may determine the eligibility. But otherwise, it is more of a technicality.
Mr. Mayor, I'll offer a motion that we approve the proposed functional class changes to the roadway system in New Richmond.
All right, there's a motion to approve the changes of the roadway system. Is there a second to that motion?
I will second that.
All right, is there any discussion? Call the roll.
Alderman Kittle?
Yes.
Alderman Lindell?
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier?
Yes.
Alderman Montello?
Yes.
Alderman Volkert?
Yes.
Alderman Kraft?
And that motion passes. Item 814, Utilities Commission recommendation, Digger Derrick.
So Mayor Horn and City Council, our electric superintendent, Wes Arndt, is participating virtually. So he'll take the next two items. These were recommendations from the Utility Commission meeting last week. The first item on the purchase of the Digger Derrick, and then the second item regarding street lighting on Johnson Drive. So Wes, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Noah, and good evening, Mayor and Council. So the electric utility uses a Digger Derrick truck to auger holes, lift and set poles, and lift other heavy equipment, including transformers. Our current unit is 1994, so aging and starting to not age well. Replacement was in our capital improvement plan for 2020, and then we put that on hold with the freeze on spending with COVID-19. It was added back to the 2021 capital improvement plan, and we reached out to the low bidder from our previous quotes. We received quotes from Alltech and Versalift, and we did not receive a quote from Terex. We sought 3 and we received 2. The Alltech bid was the low bid, and they confirmed they were not changing their price given the circumstances. Utility Commission approved moving forward with executing a purchase agreement with Alltech at their February 3rd meeting. So tonight we are seeking City Council approval to execute that purchase agreement with Alltech in the amount of $287,727, and that would be using borrowed funds. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Weston, apparently it's just the $625 extended warranty cost is what's being added.
Yes, that is correct, and that extends basically the travel expenses of the warranty. It would be covered through the first year instead of just the 90 days.
And since it seems to be a theme this evening, what's your plan for the disposition of your existing digger truck?
We plan on doing it in auction on surplus, and I think I'd be lucky to get about $5,000 for this unit. Other trucks that are half as old are going for $10,000, $12,000 on the used market. So I did not seek any trade-in value from either either of the bidders for this truck.
And if I understand correctly, it's a year before you're going to get the new truck.
That is correct. Yeah, it's 360 to 390 days. It is a custom build. So we're hoping to place an order here this winter and then have it available for the 2022 construction season, if you will.
And even if they couldn't offer you a trade-in number because they're not going to see it for a year. So there wouldn't be a number they'd give you that would be meaningful anyhow.
That's kind of how I saw it. Yes.
All right, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to offer a motion that we approve the Utility Commission recommendation to enter the purchase contract with Alltech Industries for the truck that's outlined for $287,727.
Second?
All right, there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Call the roll.
Alderman Lindell,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft.
Yes.
Alderman Kittle.
Yes.
And that motion passes. Item 815 is Utility Commission recommendation, Johnson Drive street lighting.
Well, thank you again, Mayor and Council. Johnson Drive currently does not have any street lighting, and we've been requested by residents and businesses to investigate what it would take to put some street lighting on Johnson Drive. So the approach we looked at was to utilize existing overhead power poles and basically attaching streetlight facilities to those poles. So the cost to the city would be an ongoing cost since the utility could install this and basically bill the city using our existing street lighting tariff. So what we'd be looking at is basically 5 residential area streetlights and 2 more commercial area lights. And for us to do that, the ongoing cost to the city would be about $70 per month. It would vary based on the season and the amount of daylight, based on the energy consumed. But considering there would be city expenditures moving forward, we wanted to bring this to you for your approval to move forward with installing streetlights on Johnson Drive. And again, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to address them.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to offer a motion that we approve this request from the Utilities Department to put these lights on Johnson Drive. I just really super important that certain people are able to get home when it's dark out, including our utilities president. So I just appreciate that you guys put that in the memo.
All right.
I'll
there's a
second that.
motion to approve the lighting. Is there a second to the motion?
I will second that.
All right, is there any discussion? Call the roll.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft.
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Lindell.
Yes.
So that passes. Item 816, the Emergency Management Coordinator. And we don't have this currently in our ordinance. We have a director in our ordinance. So is there plans also to update the ordinance?
Yeah, so this is, before you tonight is just the job description for the position. There would be an ordinance amendment as well that spells out more about the position and if there's a committee. So included in your packet is a draft job description for this position. Currently we don't have a job description on file. So it's something that we reviewed, job descriptions for some other communities in Wisconsin, for their emergency management. In some cases, a coordinator, some cases called the director. Every community takes a little different approach to this. Some cases, instead of designating a separate person, in some cases, this is the fire chief or the police chief or the city administrator. So in this case, kind of based on past practice here, this has been a separate position. For a long time, this was Chuck Mells. Most recently, we had Lieutenant Kaler and then Mike Darrow in this role. And so our plan would be to, with the approval of the job description, we would advertise for this internally to see if there's any current staff members, as well as if there's anyone at the Richmond area ambulance that'd be interested. We would do some interviews. Our plan would be for next week, based on the initial interest. And then for the work session on the 22nd, we would hope to bring a recommendation to appoint that person. This is a council appointment. And then whoever that person is going to be, we'd work with that person on the text amendment to the city ordinance, as well as determining is there a committee that helps support this person when it comes to planning, training, or events. This is a paid position. Our 2021 budget has included $4,000 for compensation. There's also a small amount for supplies and equipment as well. So tonight would just be looking for approval of the job description that's included in your packet. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Sarah Reese is also on the call here tonight.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to offer a motion that we approve the job description for the Emergency Management Coordinator as presented.
All right. So there's a motion to move forward with the Emergency Management Coordinator job position.
Description.
Job description. Is there a second?
I would second that.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
So this would just be for the job description, not for the hiring of the individual.
Correct. We're going to advertise an interview, and we'll also have to have a ordinance change, because in the ordinance it's a director. They're proposing a coordinator. I think it's important to move forward with this. Just looking at what happened last summer with the flood, there were some major issues. There could have been some serious implications to the city. So it's important that we get somebody who has some knowledge of some emergency management type things.
Yeah, and we think the coordinator, the title change itself, that's consistent with what FEMA utilizes in most cases. And then so much of that role is coordinating with the county, police, fire. And so we would look to have potentially a couple members of the Public Safety Committee that'd be interested in being a part of the interview process. And we've also reached out to Natasha Cardinal, the St. Clair County Emergency Management Director, to see if she would have an interest in being a part of the interview. So we would look to promote internally here this week and then schedule interviews next week.
Good. Any discussion? Hearing none, call the roll.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft.
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Lindell,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier.
Yes.
All right, and that motion is approved. Item 9 is communications miscellaneous. Anybody have any communications?
I just wanted to thank just all the staff who are participating virtually. I know we had a long agenda with a lot of items, a lot of work that goes into getting these bids. So just wanted to thank all of them for joining us here virtually.
All right, then I'll read our little statement again. So again, good evening. City staff is requesting that anyone watching cable, live or tape delayed, call the office for your important feedback on the quality of our broadcast. Again, call during normal office hours. It is important to hear from you as we look at new ways to share meetings. We are wanting feedback on how well you've heard us, how well you can see us. And please call Marie at 715-246-4268. Again, that's 715-246-4268, and talk with Marie with any feedback that you have. We do appreciate your feedback. Hearing no other communications, it'll be closed session for state statute 19.851E, deliberation regarding the investment of public funds and conducting public business where competitive or bargaining reasons require.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to offer a motion that we go into closed session.
The motion to go into closed session, is there a second to that motion? Motion and a second, call the roll.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft.
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Lindell,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello.
Yes.
And everyone who is part of closed session should just stay in the meeting. We'll give everyone else a few minutes to get out and then I'll lock the meeting. So Craig, Nick, everybody stay.
Very good. Take a few minute break if anybody needs a break. What time is the meeting on the night?